morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our final webinar of our Spring Landscape and Turfgrass webinar series. We've had a great opportunity for education for all of our members and other people in industry. Today, I'm really pleased to introduce you to Dr. Shimat Joseph from UGA, and he's going to be speaking about the biology and management of major turfgrass pests.
So the title says, turfgrass and so many phases of turfgrass and management, but what I want to do today is more focus on Billbug studies, the pest problem that we worked on over 3 years now. So, and most of the work we did was on sort farms, but the information that we gathered can be used in the golf course settings and also residential turf or landscape situation as well. So just to give an update, this is my email address and my phone number. If you can, if you want to take a picture or record it, and you can always find it at the UGA website. So if you have any issues going on with pest issues, insect pest issues, please, don't hesitate to call me. You can always call me at these numbers. Okay. So let me get started. So Billbug is in that kind of, depending on to whom you, for some people, Billbugs are a serious issues. I have seen that. For some people, kind of moderate, and some others, they are there, but not really causing any serious issues. So it's kind of thing. So I would say it's an important pest in our system, in the sort farms. But I have seen this being an issue in the golf courses as well. That situations where whatever the regular applications that they make for white grubs or things like that helps for Billbug control. Okay, so just to give you an overview of their biology, the females, they basically when they are ready to lay eggs, they basically chew on the stem. As you can see over here, they chew on a little bit on the stem, and they turn around and just put an egg over there. And that's how it happens. So as eggs hatch and the first and second instars, the larval stages, inside, they feed inside the stem. And you'll see a lot of feeding going on and basically hollow out the stem portion. And there's a lot of sawdust because of that feeding happens. And as they molt into third instar, then they're becoming in bigger size. So they no longer accommodated inside that stem. So they just leave that stem and they just fall into the ground and into the soil and they start feeding on the roots. So that's how they grow. And they pupate in the soil, and you can see over here this is kind of a pupate. And there's a 4 to 15 star larvae here that you can see, and the adults comes out from that. So that's how their life cycle is enjoyed. So in sort farms, we have seen some disparities on different grass types. Zoysia grass in particular, where we have seen most of the problems, but we see them in the Bermuda grass and other grass types too. But in the zoysia grass in particular, we have seen this as a major problem because what we have seen is a delayed growth, especially when they break the dormancy. This time around, they take longer time to break the dormancy. Some issues where we have seen where this the zoysia grass is harvested. If they're infested heavily, the grass is won't hold together. It's basically falls apart when we use these machines to cut the soils in the zoysia grass sod. So that is another problem that I have seen in the sort farms. But in the golf courses, the damage starts, initially because there the grass stays, right? And sort farms grass is grown just like cotton or soybean, where you grow for a certain time and you cut and harvest and sell it. So in the golf course or other landscape situations where the grass is going to stay. So in that situation, what we have seen is that it starts out like a small feeding damage, like a yellow spot in the beginning, and over time, what happens is that it kind of coalesces, all the small spots coalesce into the big brown patch, and you see grass dying. there. So detecting this, whether you have this problem or not, is kind of can be tricky because you, in some cases, you may not see them. That is a problem here. The first and second installers is inside the stem, and the other stages, unless the population is not very high, you may not recognize that you have a problem. But one way that I kind of advise the people who are facing this problem and not sure is just to pull it. So try to pull the grass, and if the grass is coming easy, because there are hollowed out grass, so in that case it should come out very easy. You have a Billbug problem, and we are seeing grass dying. Most not probably where you pull, but if you sample on adjacent green areas, you should be seeing, you'll be seeing high population of larval stage of the Billbugs. So that's kind of, that can be applied to whatever system, Turfgrass system you're working or you're working on. So okay, so that is kind of a overview of the problem and also their life cycle, a little bit of their biology. Most of the work, that's done in other states, in North South Carolina or in Florida, North Carolina, and all, but we didn't do any work in Georgia yet. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And most of the work, we have seen is all done in, in a golf course settings, not really in a short farm setting. So I was interested, what's going on in that setting. So it has a more wider application. So here, what you see is the two papers published, and they basically looked at the y-axis is basically number of hunting billbugs in this case, what's the billbugs, and this is basically looking at the phenology when they are emerging out. And you can see there are multiple peaks over time through the year, and this is for 1 year and another year. Some major spikes, but other smaller spikes, and there's a lot of variability between different sites too. So this is all done in golf courses, okay? And in the North Carolina, again, you're seeing again few spikes in some areas you're not seeing. So there's so much variability in their population pressure. That's what we see. And the spikes kind of suggest that more adults coming out means more generations. So looks like they have a pretty, more than 4 generations here going on in North Carolina. So we don't know what's going on in Georgia, and that's what we're trying to do here. And I focused my studies in salt farming. So I was very interested in this system because it's so dynamic and a lot of things going on here. And the grass is grown very quickly as possible, then they are harvested and sold. So that's something that I was really interested in. So the objective for this particular presentation today is to understand what species we have, what is kind of a seasonal incidence and other abundance in the salt farms. We want to know when they're active, and also interested to see their movement behavior, how far they can move, and whether the abiotic factors like temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, and things like that, whether those things influence their movement, and how they are distributed abroad in the salt farms. So again, this can have some implication on golf courses as well. So starting with the first set of projects. So here, what I did is basically use this kind of traps. We call it pitfall trap. So basically, how it works is that this linear, the PVC pipes has a slit there. So when the bugs walks over, they just fall into these slits there, and they walk not the other direction towards the center. And there is a cup here, and you get trapped. So we put these traps in the salt fields, and we put it in different types of zoysia grass. So we focus mostly on the zoysia grass in this case. And all the studies were done in a central Georgia area. So that's where we did our work. Okay. So what we're finding is the 4 species. So hunting billbugs, Mexican billbug, uneven billbug, and vegetable weevils. So these are the 4 species we were seeing. But in Florida, there are more than 4. We saw about, in that work, they saw about 9 species of billbugs. South Carolina and North Carolina in the golf courses, they saw about 4 to 5 species. So this is what we saw in our studies. And if you look among all the different species, you can clearly see that about 99% of them were hunting billbugs. So the hunting billbug is the major one, and that's exactly what we're doing. But in some sites, we have seen, uneven billbugs also, as a kind of a high population. So here, 2 years, you can see here on the x-axis, and it's basically the number of billbugs. Again, majority is hunting billbug here. And there are different lines basically coming from different sites, different fields. And you can see most of the bug emergence happened in the beginning of the year, starting February. So 2018, I would say 19 even, we had mild winter. So basically we had warm spells, and whenever the temperature spiked about 65 or so, we start seeing a huge activity, and you can see the numbers are very high in the early period. And as we go through the season, there are a few spikes here, but the population kind of goes down, and basically no activity in the winter time. Again, it spikes up again during the springtime, early springtime, early winter, or early springtime. Then basically we're seeing some spikes again. But it's interesting to see there is activity in the springtime or late winter. At the same time, there is so much difference in their numbers because they're all coming from one field, specific field that we use, really switch fields. So why this is happening? That's one thing that we were curious. So what we did is, I just want to show you by field here in this case, just to explain what's going on here at the field level. Okay, so if you look here, again the time and number of hunting billboards basically, and if I kind of overlay the growth stages of the grass itself. So we started off all the experiments, all the sites with a fully grown grass. So and eventually they were cut, and end of the year, some cases like in the summer. So they're kind of variable, but that happened, and the grass is in the growth stage for some time, then again became fully grown or kind of fully closed. The brown area of the ground is completely closed and ready to harvest. So if you look into this window, you'll see that in these boxes here, you'll see that the numbers tend to be higher when they are in fully grown stages. So that's what we saw here. And looking at the field too, kind of similar pattern here. If their grass is in a fully grown state, we are seeing more activity, more numbers. Again, field to field variability in numbers is of course is there, but again, the peak and the activity related within that field, we see more when the grass is kind of fully grown. This is another field. Again, the numbers are very low in that field, but again, you see some activity in the grass. There is a lot of greenness in the field. So if you look at everything, if I combine everything, this is what we see. So it's clearly more billbugs are found when the grass is fully grown. So in the early growth stages where you'll see less than 50% of the area is covered by the greenness or that grass. So you see a lot of brown areas. In those areas, we're not catching that many billbugs. So they are there, but numbers are very low. But numbers actually increase by time, and you will see high numbers there when in the fully grown situation. So we collected quite a bit of billbugs over the years, and what we are seeing is that in the late springtime or I would say still late winter or early springtime, that's time, or in the springtime, that's what we are seeing most of the billbugs activity in the salt farms in this case. And again, there is definitely some spikes in the fall that we saw. And clearly, when you overlay with the growth stage of the grass, we are seeing more aligned towards higher numbers captured when the grass is fully grown. Again, we didn't see any difference between males and females, so they are kind of almost 50-50. And another thing that we noticed is that more numbers were captured in the Xeon and Emerald, more narrowly zoysia grass versus zenith or altoro, that's more like broadly lead zoysia grass cultivars. So there is some, so there are cultivars, again, there are different species. I think Emerald is a hybrid. I think these are two different species. And you can see that there is some clear differences in their numbers from different breeds. So when you look at this comparing to other states, surrounding states, you'll see, Florida, they reported about 9 species, and we are basically seeing, close to um, um, 4 species, but I would say vegetable beetles were there, but not that many. So it's predominantly hunting billbug, and hunting billbug is something that's captured all throughout the states. And again, number of generations. In our case, looks like based on our data, it's basically maybe 3 generations. So there's a lot of overlapping that we saw in our data. So whether DD model, all those things will work really well in our system, probably not. Especially if you're looking at the late winter or springtime, if you want to time, that's a time you'll see a lot of adult activity, and it kind of dies down as we get into the spring and the summer. So most of them are already in adult stage as they pass through the winter. So DD model may not be a really good tool here to assess their progression and timing. So basically what we're saying at this point is the adults are mostly overwintering, so we're most likely to see a lot of adults coming out in the springtime. Later, you see, there are still a lot of larval stages also going through the winter, and they are developing later in the season. So that's why you're saying more overlapping generation is a possibility here with regard to billbugs in Georgia, especially in the central Georgia conditions, because things can vary north, and also we go south. So we might see more activity and more generations is possible because of the conditions in warm. It's much more warmer there, so things can be more different there. So going to another objective, now try to understand where they are active. So this is very typical scene when you go to a sort farm. You'll see areas where the grass is cut and they are growing in a different stage, and this view you can see within the field. You don't need to look at different farms. They say within the field itself, not between the fields or different farms. So this is very typical. So I was kind of curious what's going on here, whether the bugs move from here, from the fully grown area and attack there, or is there any movement? Just to have a sense of it, so that we can, the whole goal here is with sort farms is so vast, and we talk to the sort growers. For them, it's not really easy to manage the entire field, applying the insecticides. It's expensive and labor intensive. So spot application is something that they always encourage and they would like to do. And that's what I'm trying to go into, how to sample, to streamline where we need to apply, and also time when we want to apply whatever insecticide we choose to apply. So that's a whole goal of understanding their movement and their behavior in the field. So what we did is we put out these traps, these linear pitfall traps. So we did it in the Bermuda grass and also the zoysia grass, and we put it on like immediately harvested, like within the 1 month or so harvested grass versus like fully grown. So we did all these experiments during the late winter or early springtime. So what we see here, so we are seeing obviously more activity in a non-harvested, like fully grown grass. We are seeing more numbers. At the same time, we are seeing some numbers here on the harvested grass. So this is very interesting, because that basically says that the billbugs are still walking, they're moving in there, they're still emerging out as a possibility. So, but again, we're not sure whether they are walking from this area to this area, or emerging from this area and walking around here and trying to reinfest. So that part we're not sure. So for that, we did another study where we basically, cut a grass in the center and we put all these traps all around. And we try to learn the traffic from harvested area to non-harvested area, and the traffic from the non-harvested area to traffic harvested area. What is their movement and what kind of number we are seeing? So that's what we did next. And what we see here is that there is no difference basically. So we are seeing activity in both areas, both in the central areas going this way and coming this way. This is pretty interesting, right? You when we repeated it, we saw more activity, more coming from the not harvested area, but still there is a good number of bugs coming from that small box. So that's kind of shows that our the way we approach towards management, because we typically only apply insecticides on a fully grown or growing grass. We never think about making application or something like that, already harvested grass. So that is what's kind of eluding, that bugs are still active there. They're trying to re-infest some of the grass that's really growing after the harvest process. So basically, exactly what I said is what's written here. So here, the data kind of alluding that we need to pay attention and maybe consider that those areas that's recently harvested needs to be managed. That might be one way to reduce the population, because this managing billbug is not like one spray application or two. This is more like a program approach, and you need to do that for 7 years to get the overall population down. And salt farms, I feel like it's very important to study, because this is where the grass grows everywhere, right? It's planted in golf courses and landscapes and things like that. So this is very important to know their biology in these things. So going to another area where I want to understand how far they move. Basically we know that they're active in different places in the golf courses, in the salt farms. So, but again, we want to know how far they can move. So I was trying to, connect our kind of correlate that with the temperature, wind speed, and relative humidity kind of thing, so that we can have a sense of their movement. So that's what we did here. This is my graduate student. She did most of the work I'm presenting today. So what she did is she collected the bugs and they exposed them to different temperatures, like 60 degrees to all the way to 90 degrees. And for a day or so, then just put those bugs on some kind of arena here in a dark chamber, because they are active in the night. They're nocturnal insects. So we had to do everything in the darkness. So I did that experiment, and so all the experiments were done in a room temperature, but they are all exposed to that specific temperature here for 24 hours. So what we see that as they are exposed to, or they get acclimated to higher temperature, they tend to walk more for the further distance, especially in the females. But in males, we didn't see any difference here. So this we did it on a hard surface. So we choose to do it on a filter paper. So it can be like a hard surface. So we did the experiment again on a sand. It's more like a soft surface. So just to understand their movement. So we can see they can move about 40 feet. In this case here, in this case, the females can walk up to 40 feet in a 28 degrees centigrade. It's about 80, 80, 81, 82 kind of temperature that we're talking about here. In the case of sand, you start seeing the males were walking a lot than females. But the point here we are making here is that even in the low temperature, you can see 60 degrees or 65 or somewhere there, there's a lot of movement here. 70 degrees, like 21. It's kind of relates to our early springtime temperatures, where they can still move in the low temperatures. That's what the point I'm making. And they're not walking a whole lot. That's another point to remember compared to higher temperature. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And again, we did these studies in the fields where we just measured how far they moved from the center. So we did that inside more controlled dark conditions. And also we did that in the field, in the parking lots and those kind of things where we can track them, how far they move. So in that, especially this is from the outdoor or in the the parking lot kind of settings, This is surface temperature and this is distance mode, and you can see there is no relationship here. So that means the bugs were collected from the turf grass. We didn't acclimate or anything like that. We just put them and see how far they move from the point of introduction. So net distance is like how far they displaced from that the initial spot of introduction. Total distance can be rounded, they go around and we just measured all the distance they move without any displacement aspect to that. But we didn't see much difference here. But again, there are a few individuals that move further as the temperature went up. So they have a potential to move further. There is no doubt about that. But more chunk of them, even in the higher temperature, they tend to stay within that area, within that region. So that is something very important to know. Wind speed, we saw some relationship with as the wind speed increases, they tend to walk less or they didn't cover that much distance. So coming back to this system here, what we are learning is that they tend to stay around in the same area, not moving further. There are some individuals they can definitely move further. We saw that every individual is different, like just like us, right? So I consider all the individual billbug as an individual. They work differently. So, but we are trying to understand a pattern here. So in this sense, what we learn here is that they tend to stay in a general area, not walk further. Whereas, of course, there are exceptions of few individuals that they walk further. So if they're emerging from here, likely that they're going to stay here. Most more likelihood that they're going to stay here, reinfest the grass. The same thing is going to happen here. So that's what's kind of alluding to. Okay, so it's kind of gives us kind of a sense of their movement within the field, and these kind of movements, perhaps this is happening, but I don't see there is an incentive because there's readily they have a lot of food available. They have the other males and females available, so they can mate, and there is a lot of food here to lay eggs. So what's the point in going further? So they most likely tend to stay here rather than going this way. Okay, but if they are emerging from here, they're likely to stay there and re-inoculate and build a population with time. So now, well, this is basically the slides basically says whatever I said. Explain that. So now going to the last part of this presentation. Here, what I'm trying to understand here is how they are distributed within the soil farm. So again, we are trying to understand, piece by piece, how far they can move, where they're active. Now we want to understand how they're distributed within the field. That's very important. It's kind of important because then we can say that whatever the application you tend to do, we have to concentrate on certain areas. So again, that's something that the soil producers and that's what they like to do. They want to concentrate and they want to make spot applications. So because they want to avoid spraying everywhere. So that is one aspect to that. And also, we want to know how you know that we got it. So say I have a billbug, but how to know that I got a number that triggered an application. But I am not talking about threshold here, like you see 10, then then you need to go and make an application, or 100, that I'm not talking about threshold concept here, but at least to know that you got the problem. That is another problem here, because billbugs are always in the move, and the soil producers say that I see them, but I don't know from where they're coming and from where they are infested in the grass. So that part we don't know really well. So that's what we're trying to understand, how they're distributed, and some directions to how to sample for them, and so that if you see something that can trigger an application or trigger a management there. Okay. So what I did here is that I tried to sample for the larval stage of the billbugs here, and also adults. I will show you that as well. So just sampled, went to about, I think we went to 7 fields and started sampling just like a grid fashion here. And I know exactly from where I collected in relation to a road or adjacent to the wood line or can be something like that, or in the center of the road or something like that. We tried to be consistent, so we did most of the studies closer to a wood line, so that we can address the variability. And all the studies were done during in the winter time. So we know that lava is present. Based on this study, we know that the lava stages are all winter, and in addition to others. So this is what we did, and I know a couple of slides is going to be a little bit confusing and kind of overwhelming, but my idea is just to show you the distribution here. So this is kind of a pictorial representation of the larvae that we collected. And the greener that you see here or becomes yellow in some spot, that basically says that they are aggregated in distribution. So the natural what we saw is they are aggregated in distribution. So you can see there is a lot of patterns here. So we use this some softwares to analyze this, and that's what the number shows this, and that basically suggests that it's aggregated. And this is another figure that comes out from this that software. If that goes up and kind of goes plateaus from there, that kind of indicates it's an aggregated distribution. And here, wherever I have this line, that basically shows the distance when they occur in the field. So that means here is close to 5 meters apart in this case. That we call them a lag distance, whatever it is, because it's part of that software that the way it is analyzed. And the x-axis, we call it semi-radians. I don't think we need to focus on those things. But the point here is that they are, at this range, about 4 to about 5 meters apart. That's how they are distributed within that. And that's something that we should use if you go in the direction of sampling. So in this case, one field we didn't see any aggregation, but all 3 fields we saw aggregation pattern for the larval stage. Moving into adults, we also did the same study where we put out these pitfall traps here and we try to collect adults, and that's what we're seeing here. So again, same thing, greenness and yellowness, that's what shows that's more aggregated in the distribution. And that's exactly we saw in these fields when we did that. And this also, this figures basically suggests that how far apart you're going likely to see an adult in a sample using a pitfall sample. That's what I use. So again, that is another important thing. Whatever I use is going to be, it's all tied up to this data. Okay. So I used the cup cutters that we use in the golf courses. I use that cup cutters to sample the core samples in the for larval stages. In this case, it's a simple, solo cup pitfall traps. That's what I used here. So you had to, whatever I give, whatever numbers I say, it has to go with the sampling method I use. It has to align really well. Otherwise, if you use some other method or method of sampling, then probably it will not reflect to this data. So again, all these fields, different samples that we did, this is what these numbers look like, and kind of shows the range of distances where these insects occur in the field. So this is the bottom line. We're looking for sampling for larvae using a cup cutter. We're talking about 4 meters apart. That's what we need to do the sampling. So if you do the 4 meter apart sampling, one here, 4 meter apart, another one 4 meter. If you see larval stage, that means they are there, they are present in the field, they are aggregated in that area. That's what it means. So for adults, same thing. If you tend to put it, if you're going to put the pitfall traps, and I would say, if you take an average around 6 meters, if you need to put 6 meters, and if you're seeing adults, that means they are aggregated in that area, in that spot where you put out this trap. And that's where you need to spray. That's where you need to make an application. So that's the bottom line. Now, always the question is what to spray is always there. So based on my work and others, we know that if you're shooting for adults, especially that's really happening, I showed the data that they are active in the late winter and springtime. That's the time you need to focus for adults because that's a bunch of adults come out and start mating and start laying eggs. So that's, if we are focusing on adults, that's the time to do it. And pyrethroids work very well. So for pyrethroids, bifenthrin, these are available in both golf courses and also soft farm situations. And that's what needs to be used. I also like this product, Acyliprin, but there are many generic products out there now. This basically diamine. They work very well on adults as well. So they have very good activity on adults. They are a little expensive end, but it's worthwhile to don't use the same insecticide, same active ingredients all the time. So you need to mix insecticides from different classes. If you're making back-to-back applications, just make sure you don't want a resistant population developing, especially in the golf course situation where the grasses remain to stay, and if the billbugs are there, if you're using the same chemistry, you're exposing and naturally selecting, like there's selection going on. Resistance can be a problem all the time. For our stages, neonicotinoids are the best at this point. Again, chlorine trimethyl, that is acetylene, has a good efficacy on larval stages as well. It's just that, Again, timing wise, for larval stage, I would say, sometime in May, June time should be a good time because adults are already laid eggs at that time. The major floods of insects that comes out, and you're shooting for sometime in late May to June because that's the time when the third instars come out of the stem. Because that's another thing to remember. The first two instars are inside the stem. You may not see any activity or anything like that. You start seeing the buds when they come to third or fourth and fifth instars. That's in the soil. So that's why it kind of delayed a little bit. Again, they're not going to go very deep in the soil, unlike other white grubs and things like that. But still, make the application like sometime in June will be appropriate for this. So an application point of view, adults are active in the night. That's another thing to remember. So if you're making an application in the daytime, you're basically looking for the residual activity sort of thing. So adults comes out, they start walking over it, they get exposed, that kind of thing. But most of the pyrethroids function when they really fall on the insect. So they're more contact insecticides. So just like keep that also in mind. So because the adults are active in the night. That's just the moment sunset, you'll see them coming out. They'll just come out. Watering is very important, especially if you're using neonicotinoids, especially imidacloprid. Those products are not very water soluble. The diamide I mentioned, acetylene. If you're using that product, make sure you water them very well because they are not really mobile in the soil. So you need to make sure that you water really well, at least to get to that soil root zone area. Because they just move very slow. They just confine to the organic matter and moves very poorly in the soil. Other options, there's a lot of nematodes available. Again, there are growers out there, they want to try that kind of thing. Definitely, this is very effective. Again, timing and watering, all those things are, irrigation is all very important in use of nematodes for controlling. Again, when you use like nematodes or any living organisms, keep in mind that they are living organisms, and so there might be ups and downs in the kind of efficacy that so the expectation is kind of worked around that. So it's not like using an pesticide. The insecticides it's much more reliable in that sense because of if you time it and if you hit it the right time, you're likely to get a good efficacy and good control. So I'm seeing mixed results from using fungal pathogens. But some studies shows that, again, very good results, but there are others kind of in between. So, I personally don't recommend fungal pathogens for bug control, but nematodes for sure is shown that it's really effective. And that's all I got. I think I'm way too early, and that's all I have. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask me.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Lots of information. I know I've been involved in reviewing grant proposals recently for specialty crop grants, and there have been just a whole bunch of them about Billbugs. So there's definitely a lot of interest. I've seen your name on some of them as well.
Okay.
I said yes to those, definitely.
That's great. Thank you.
Are you seeing these in a particular area in the state or throughout the state?
Well, that's a good question. So right now, I'm seeing more in the central part of the state, and some sort producers, some golf courses in the southern part of the state too. So I don't know. It all depends on how you manage and kind of thing. So some growers having serious problem with this, and some are not much. So it's kind of, I would say, central part of Georgia all the way down south that we are seeing this as a problem. I haven't seen a lot in the northern part of the state at this point, but it may be premature to say that because it's a serious problem in South Carolina and North Carolina. That's basically so they are there for sure. The thing is that whatever most locations, they also deal with the white grape problems too. So whatever application we time it for white grapes will be helping with this bug also.
Okay.
That's really happening.
That's good. It's effective. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact Dr. Joseph. I think he provided his email address. You're always so helpful and responsive, so thank you. And if you are applying or signed up for pesticide credits, please know for this and for previous of our webinars, they will be submitted today for today. The others have been submitted, but the Georgia Department of Ag is a little bit behind because they've received so many lately. So rest assured that they will be put onto your license accounts. So I think that's it for today. I appreciate everyone being involved and thank everyone from the University of Georgia and industry who has presented and participated in these. So thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.